Welcome to episode number 36 of the National Land Realty Podcast, where we discuss all things land. Our goal here is to inform, educate, and entertain those of you who own land or are interested in the buying and selling of land throughout the United States. My name is Mac Christian, and I am the Chief Marketing Officer here at National Land Realty. I'll be your host for this episode. In this episode, I'm talking with land professionals Jack Gabriel and Greg Clearman. These two have started working together on land real estate deals, and they cover territory in Mississippi, Arkansas, Alabama, Louisiana, and Tennessee. The approach of working as a team is not new to real estate, but it is not as commonly seen in rural land. Jack and Greg are highly successful, and their listings contain some of the most prestigious recreational tracts that can be found in the United States today. They give their insights on working together and useful information for buyers and sellers in today's market. Now sit back and enjoy. I am sitting here with Jack Gabriel and Greg Clearman out of Mississippi. And Jack, Greg, why don't you just talk me through a little bit how you kind of got here with National Land? And I'll start with you, Jack. Yeah, I'll let you kick it off, and then I'll get with you, Greg, here as soon as he's done.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I've been in the land business since 2012, worked for a few different companies, was a broker for a company before I moved to Mississippi. And, just spent a lot of money on marketing, spent a lot of money and time in the office trying to generate leads and different strategies. And had some friends from a previous company I worked for that made the transition over to National Land, and spoke with them and had a meeting with Ronnie Richardson, and it was done after that. He could sell a brick to a wall, I guess. And it's been a fun ride so far. I mean, I've been with National Land almost 2.5, 3 years now. And I guess over the last year and a half, Greg and I have teamed up. So it's been really good.
Yeah. And Greg, how did you get here?
Well, I went a different route. I started out with a smaller brokerage here in Mississippi, and which got me going. And it was really good. Looking back, I'm glad I did it, because it lets you see how other operations are ran, and what's good and what is not so good, and where you fit in and what it is you want to do and achieve. And so I was there for approximately 2 years and started realizing I wanted to expand and grow into other markets, and that particular brokerage was not fit for that. So I started looking into who would allow me to achieve and get to a platform I wanted to get to. And it turned out that National Land was the perfect fit for me. And it's just been a wonderful thing from day one, to be honest with you. And it's been no regrets, no reserve, and been having a good time doing it.
That's good to hear. Well, yeah. So the two of you have something cool going on. Like, the two of you have kind of joined forces to create something greater here in the last little bit, and started working together, on working with clients, working with land. Tell me a little bit about that. How did you guys kind of just start working as a team? And I realize it's like, you're not together on, or are you together on all contracts, or are you working, side by side on everything, or is it sort of formulated like that? How have you structured this?
Jack, you got an answer?
I'd say it's evolving that way. Yeah. I mean, we've kind of had an open discussion at the beginning of this year, because we had such a good year last year to kind of move in that direction. I'll go back to kind of your original question, though, Mac, how it started. I had a very difficult listing 2 years ago in central Mississippi, and really wasn't getting any traction on it. And actually had it co-listed with my previous company just out of courtesy. And when that expired, I got it renewed and was talking to Ronnie, and Ronnie was like, "Look, Greg can sell this tract." And reached out to Greg, and we decided we were going to co-list it. And that's really what started. It was a property that was a river bottom hardwood tract, and just took a unique buyer. And Greg and I guess we had some hurdles with that whole transaction, but because of the dynamics and the way that we work together, we were able to just take any kind of adversity and pull and get that deal closed. And I think from that point on, we had just such a level of trust and respect for each other that it just was a natural fit. And as we started doing more and more deals together, we got more and more comfortable. And I mean, Greg, we've kind of said it before. I feel like you're my big brother. I mean, we're like family, and we've got some exciting things coming up. And I just think, it's just there's no end in sight. The way I see it, we've got great momentum. We're trying to develop systems each and every day. I mean, Follow-Up Boss is going to be something that I'm looking into to kind of coordinate with Greg in Dallas and set up that team on it. And thanks, National Land, for putting that together. But anyway, Greg, go ahead and I guess tell your side of the story.
Well, I mean, it's a lot behind what you just said, Jack. But, Jack, for instance, Jack right now currently lives about 75 miles south of me, and we're covering a footprint of 3 states basically at this point. So when all that started coming together with Jack and I, we started realizing how important and how easy things started to become taking care of clients from showings, following up on listings, and getting things under contract. And it just started kind of just a domino effect, and was just working really, really well. And so that's one thing that's, again, is unique about National Land, is having access to so many other qualified, people in your business that you can use. And I don't want to use the word piggyback off of, but you can certainly, get behind and help that one person that may be struggling with getting to a particular listing or a showing or something. And next thing you know, you're just growing more and more and more and more. And it's kind of what's happened here. And it wasn't something that we set out to do. It came to us in a way, kind of organically. And it's been a game changer for sure.
Yeah. So, and then to clarify for anybody listening, what we're talking about here is we have two land agents, 2 land professionals that were working individually that came on board with National Land and have started working together with each other exclusively as sort of a team effort, to where when somebody's, and please jump in here and throw something at me if I get anything wrong. But what you have here is where when you start working with a client, they're getting the brain power and the time of 2 individuals as opposed to one, to where if one of you is not available, the other one, chances are, will be, to do a showing, to answer questions. One of you can be out in the field working on another listing or with another client, while one of you follows up with another client. I mean, you're just getting more coverage for the stuff that you are already working with. And plus the added benefit of that is neither one of you has to walk in with a client and be the smartest guy in the room. You've got 2 brains in there that can, if one of you doesn't know what the other one will, and then you have a network throughout the entire organization that you can go to in case the 2 of you don't have it. Is that kind of, it's kind of a unique thing that you have going on there, right?
It's exactly right. And it makes you feel like you've got all bases covered. You're not missing anything. You've got, and so with the Delta, the way the Mississippi's laid out, you got the Delta, you got South Mississippi. It's 2 different terrains, and Jack is a professional in that market there. And I feel like I've kind of brought that same level here in the Delta. And so you have to be able to speak almost 2 different languages, if you will, of different clients. And Jack and I have just really done well with working both ends of those buyers and sellers. And it's paying off.
Yeah. So, and Jack, you brought up, beforehand, we were talking about things that we would discuss in here, and you were telling me about a particular 1031 exchange that you guys have worked on about a year ago. I was wondering if the 2 of you could tell me about that, sort of how this dynamic played into that, and how this all worked out to be able to do a deal that's a little more complicated with the 2 of you working together.
So it's a neat story. It was a property National Land had previously listed, and it was listed with another broker, and then we got brought back in because the seller realized how valuable National Land and having our resources was. And we got a call from a buyer from Florida that was selling a home and had some 1031 money. And I think I fielded the first call, and then he called Greg, and we were just kind of back and forth. It was all about the same property. And we scheduled a time to go show it. Greg and I went over there. We showed it. We wasn't there maybe 30 minutes and conversation, and the guy said, well, this isn't the property for me. And Greg, off the top of his head, had another property in mind in central Mississippi. So we just all hopped in trucks and headed up that way, and felt good vibes with the buyer on that tract. Thought he was probably going to make a move on it. Well, while we're sitting there showing that tract, Greg gets a call from a referral about a new listing opportunity, and the guy started basically telling Greg what the property had and price and everything. And Greg told him, hey, we're with a buyer right now that needs to see that tract today. And we were kind of running out of daylight, so we might have broke the speed limit there a little bit, getting over to on the other side of Jackson. But the caretaker met us there, showed us the property, and the buyer ended up hopping in the truck with Greg, riding back to town, and basically decided he wanted to make an offer on that tract. So we, set out with one listing, showed the buyer an off-market property, and then went and showed him something that we were going to get listed within the next week. And we had that property under contract the next day. Anyway, I just think, being able to adapt and not just being just so tunnel vision on one property. You definitely don't want to muddy the waters with buyers, but you also want to get them what they need and what they want. And I think Greg and I both realized at that point when he got that call, it was go time. We needed to head to that track, and it was a pretty good sale for us. I think it was like a $2.5 million sale.
Yeah, it all took place from the moment we met the particular buyers. I would say within 6 hours, we had found the property that they actually wanted, that we had no idea that was even available at the time. And that's just, it goes to show you, it just worked out. But that's the strength in the networking, of knowing certain things that are going on that other people do not know. And we were able to take that buyer, and we were 80 miles east of where we started, and finally landed where he wanted to be. And we put that deal together that day. And I can tell you that seller, which he had that particular property already listed for a while, and became disgruntled with his particular agent. So he was, to say the least, he was very impressed with how quick that came together. And it was pretty cool.
And if I'm hearing this right, this is where both of you receive phone calls from this person, and then you're out in the field with them, and then a lead came into you, Greg, which might not have come to Jack, right? Where, just by the two of you working together, when one of you acquiring a lead or one of you acquiring a referral, were able to, it just happened to work like that, right? And it probably is just because you've got more people working on it.
Well, we do. And that particular day, in that case, I'm not going to say it happens every day. However, we have found ourselves putting that same formula together and using it with other buyers or sellers, and it's worked out. And it's just, it's a good fit. And you want to be unique in some way to your competition, to be able to do something that they're not doing, or that they are do better at what it is that they are doing. And to me, knowledge of your territory is one of the key factors of just knowing where things are, or where it's going to be coming up available soon, or whatever, to be able to put that buyer in the right place that he wants to call home.
Yeah. And so explain for a second, for anybody that doesn't know, and I always try to I try to put out as much information as I can. Tell me a little bit about, you mentioned taking a client out to see an off-market listing. Mm-hmm. And tell me a little bit about, one, how you hear about off-market listings and what that process looks like. And sort of, again, where there's more of you working with one client, how that plays a benefit to this. Because I find that whole atmosphere of marketing off-market listings to be really unique. So, tell me a little bit about that.
Jack, you want to go?
Well, I'll just make this comment. I think, Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say over half of our volume last year of sales that we did together was off market properties, if I remember correctly. And I think that's pretty unique to kind of how we are able to, build relationships and still have the trust of these buyers and sellers, and carry the deal all the way to the end with really no worries of getting, kind of somebody going around our back and doing something. But I'll let you elaborate on, how you get the off market stuff, because you always get some pretty good ones.
I don't know if it's anything I do different, but I try and stay very active with interacting with people. I mean, it's what we're supposed to do anyway. And so you should be constantly engaging with other landowners and friends, and they're picking up saying, hey, I know somebody's about to sell his farm or wants to buy this particular place. And next thing you know, you've done put two and two together and you've got a deal done. And it could happen, for instance, in that case, it happened within 6-8 hours of us meeting that particular buyer. But I mean, that's what I do, is just whether it's lunch with friends at the country club or if it's, at the local hamburger joint, is just paying attention to what's going on around you and befriending as many people as you can, and just being aware of your market. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier, just being awareness of the market. And you'll be able to find a lot of deals. You'll be able to find a lot of people that don't want to actually list their property, but they want to sell it. And that's okay too. It's not ideal what we want, but if that's the way we need to go, then we'll work around it.
So that's what I was going to ask about that. Like, when you get an off-market deal, is it something where a landowner has come to you like, so, hey guys, I wanted to talk to you. I want to sell it, but I don't want to put it on the market. But if you find somebody that's looking for something like this, let me know. Is it just kind of like offhand like that? And you end up.
It's very offhand. It's very kind of off the cuff. And I'm working on one right now that's a large deal. It's $17-18 million. That is off the market, and he wants to keep it on the down low. And again, we're about to get to the point where we're going to a showing and then a contract. So it's a lot of it is very casual, loose conversation, and sometimes it can be a little more direct. And this is the plan. So.
Yeah, and so something I wanted to ask the two of you was, you both have very different ways of working, just given what plays into your strengths, your personalities, the way that you work. Tell me a little bit about sort of the dynamic between the two of you, and then the question I want to pose to both of you is, what are the most important things that you keep in mind or that you work with clients on when you go to list a new property? What do you focus on when you go to list? That's the two questions I wanted to ask you out of that.
Well, I think the first thing, Jack, were you going?
No, go ahead.
I think the first thing you got to, and I've learned this over time, I didn't always used to do this, is actually my access. Is find out, what do we have a good access point, or is it going to be a problem? Because if we do have some problems, we need to get on it then, as opposed to later. And then second, I like to, the location and the, how well is this landowner taking care of his property? Is it let it go? Is there a lot to be done to get it back on its feet? Those particular things are important to me before we actually start moving to an engagement.
Yeah, and I think that this kind of is a good segue to the way I feel is, Greg from the start is thinking about the property and the business side of it and what it offers and access. And I'm a little different. And when I engage in conversation, I kind of just immediately want to make friends with that person. So I'm not really even thinking about the property yet. I'm more, hey, what do you do for a living? Where you from? Did you enjoy the baseball game this weekend? That kind of stuff. But I think that's where Greg and I, the yin and the yang kind of come together, because he has so much knowledge about just the facts of life, if you want to call it, the facts of selling property and the property itself. And not that he doesn't, engage in that relational side, But, I from the get go and going after that and trying to build that relationship and trust. So we kind of have each other's back on that end. And that's my answer, and I'm sticking to it.
I like it. I like the answer. And then, Greg, you kind of, where you've come through in the last couple of years is you put a pretty heavy concentration on the photography that you've been doing. Tell me a little bit about sort of the importance of photography when you're going out to a new listing. Are you looking at how to get good photos of it when you first step onto the property, or is that something that just sort of evolves as you go along? And is it your, I guess the biggest question is that your primary focus is how it displays?
It is not my primary focus. It is something that is very important and is going to come from me. I think it's automatic. I already know that I'm going to get this angle, this picture. And, every property can be, there's not one property alike. So there could be features that come up that, you want to be able to show. It could be the pine plantations. It could be deer habitat. It could be wild duck habitat. It can be a lodge. Any features that really pull that track out and separate it from others. So when you're talking about photography and the quality, we've been blessed to have one of our own brothers on board, Jason Miller, that is an exceptional photographer. And he does a very good job. But I just want to be able to showcase that property the best I can with every feature that property has to make it, pop. And so I don't know if I really go in there with an agenda on pictures, but I do have an agenda on what it is I'm looking at and who's going to buy it. I start thinking about what kind of buyer is going to jump here. And so I'm already starting to think about where am I going to take this property to when I get there. That's just me.
So you're doing a little bit of target marketing there, and you said photography is not your primary focus. So between the two of you, is there a primary focus when you're going to list? And if there is, obviously, what is that? Or a combination of everything, like pricing it correctly and telling the story and getting the photos and putting it on the right places, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think the primary focus is to get it inked up, get the man to sign on the line that's dotted. Number one, if you don't have that, then you're not going to walk away with much. But that's my goal, is to find out where do we stand and can we get this listing, and so what is it going to take to do it from our seller. So Jack, go ahead.
No, I think you're right, Greg. We want a lot of paperwork. We want signed contracts, signed deals, because you can spin your wheels a lot. Going out on the property, looking at it, having kind of a thought process and a plan. And if you don't leave there with a listing agreement or an offer, it can kind of haunt you a little bit because you thought it really, really well. And you're wondering why the seller or buyer hadn't called you back. And, the key is we're not trying to manipulate anyone, but what we're trying to do is show them how we're the best that they can have in doing that job while we're there. And if we can share our plan and our vision for that project, 9 times out of 10, we'll get that contract signed, whether it's a listing agreement or an offer.
Yeah. And then, that's the kind of the quandary there too, right? Like when you meet with a new possible client, the thing that you're offering is the time and knowledge that you've acquired over the years, where you're putting in time to learn the land. You put in time to review it with the prospect, right? To talk to them. And then, but you want to validate that. You want to get the exclusivity of working with that person because you've already given them some time to talk to them in the first place and to get to know them in the property, and then try and just say, okay, we need to move forward. And I promise you, yeah, I get that, to where you definitely want to seal the deal there and make sure that your time is being appreciated and that you can do the best job you can for them, right?
Exactly.
So when you guys are looking at it, and Greg, you talked about this when you were talking about thinking about who's possibly going to buy, and what you're talking about there is basically you're looking at target marketing right out of the gate, right? Like who's the purchaser of this product, who's going to buy this land. What are some of the main things that you all work with in your area of Mississippi? You mentioned river bottom hardwood. I didn't know that. Is that common? What do we got here?
Absolutely. Yeah. Jack, you want to tell him, or I?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you get along the Mississippi River or any river system, you have a lot of hardwoods, and it has a tendency to flood. So we call it river bottom hardwood, and it's usually some of the best deer and duck hunting that you can find in those areas. And then, like Greg said, I mean, he focuses on the Delta a lot. So not only does he have that good river bottom hardwood along the Mississippi River, he also has, some of the ag land or some of the WRP tracts that have been developed for duck hunting and giant deer. And down here in Southwest Mississippi, where I live, we've got some hill ground, and it's a little bit flatter, a little bit more dry. So you kind of have more of a getaway. People mostly from Louisiana just wanting, some hunting land they can come shoot some deer on and get away from hurricanes or just get away from the office. So
that's a worry that I am not used to, is y'all's hurricanes and everything. So when you guys decided to do this, are clients used to it? Does it even faze them that they're working with two people? Because I think a lot of people expect to work with one agent when they do, enter into an agreement or when they're working with somebody. And are there some questions that you get like out of the gate when somebody's like, so I got to talk to both of you? Who do I call? Like, how does that tend to work with you two?
To my knowledge, we hadn't had anyone that's had any uncomfortable feelings towards it. If anything, they probably embrace both personalities because they are different, and that's fine. But Jack, I mean, you may know something I do not, but I don't feel like we've had anybody that we've walked away from that was uncomfortable with the situation or was not pleased with the experience that they've been given.
I agree. I think it's sort of natural. I mean, we, like you said, organic earlier, when we're meeting with people, I mean, we're both very personable guys. We both know what we're talking about. And I think people can see that. And then, Mac, you mentioned it, you got the brain power of two guys and the work ethic of two guys versus just one. So it's really a benefit. And I think as we meet with people and the longer we do this, it becomes even more natural. There's no awkwardness. There's no, confusion really. And a lot of that comes from the respect that Greg and I have together. Look, I'm not jealous. He gets a phone call and he calls him and that's his guy, but he may need me to call him kind of like you said earlier. So you just have to have that trust. And I guess that's why the word, I said jealous, because you have to trust each other, and we do. So.
Which is sort of a rare combo in the real estate world, right? Like there's a lot of distrust in real estate, it seems like. So to talk to the two of you that have such a cool dynamic, I really think that that's neat. I didn't kind of ask you at the beginning, but like, both of you started out with land real estate outfits or, real estate before, national land. How did you get into land in the first place? Did you have backgrounds in forestry, in fish and wildlife, or anything like that, or just an appreciation, I guess? But what kind of brought you in?
Well, for me, it was more of an appreciation. It was looking back in my first career, my younger days, I never dreamed about selling real estate or selling hunting land, but I was hunting every time I could. And some things materialized into my life and my wife said one day, she said, Greg, you need to get in the real estate business. And I did. And it's been an absolutely wonderful ride this whole time. There's bad days for sure. But for me, it was more of an appreciation. It was more of, looking back how much knowledge I had through the area that I live in along the Mississippi River in the Delta. And outside of that, and it worked, literally from day one. And so I don't know if there was any one thing that jumped out of the sky and said, go sell land.
Yeah.
But for me, that's what happened. Jack?
Yeah. Now, I was working in the hospital system. I have 2 bachelor's degrees in healthcare, and I sell land for a living. So I would just say, just varying circumstances, different economical issues and political issues, and, have changed the hospital system. And I decided to get out 12 years ago and took my real estate license classes in 2 weeks online. I had my license in a month. And, I had a really good mentor at that time that kind of brought me in, and we were really involved in RLI, and he, Realtors Land Institute's a big help when it comes to education, especially new agents, and led to me getting my ALC. And, a lot of what I know, though, is just like Greg. I grew up hunting. I grew up duck hunting in the marsh in Venice and deer hunting in North Louisiana and the river bottom hardwoods. So, I get depressed when I'm inside. I could be outside all day, and we got the best office in the world for sure. In fact, one of the things Greg and I kind of joke about, if things get slow for us, we're like, man, we got to go get in the truck together and go ride, because it seems like when we're riding together, the phone's ringing. We got deals coming along, so if we feel like we'll hit a wall, Greg told me the other day, man, just come drive up to Jackson. Let's go for a ride. So
I like what, and that's what probably will lead up to my next question. What's the typical day look like for the two of you? And going on into it, like, do you have scheduled meetings? Do you just like meet whenever? What does that look like? One of you work in one area and one of you work in another area, and how do you communicate?
Well, we communicate. We're constantly on the phone, either via text or by cell phone, talking about a new listing or showings or closings that are coming together. So I think that we wake up and we do whatever it is we have to do that day. There are days that are scheduled with a series of events that we have at task at hand. And that could turn in from starting out listing a property that morning at 10. At 12, we've got to be at a certain place showing 400 acres, 2 more showings, and then we're calling it a day. And that could turn into some days of 300-400 miles of travel. Am I right, Jack?
Yeah, so definitely.
There are numerous times where we have 16-hour days of doing what it is we got to do to get the deal done.
And I will say a lot of times, even when we say, hey, we may take a break, there's really not a break, because we're still making phone calls, still checking emails, still, typing up spreadsheets or whatever. So, I was on spring break last week for vacation, and I was still writing offers and writing contracts, and Greg was too. And, it does make you feel like you hit a wall when you're away and you're not here in your truck, or you're not here with your partner going out and doing things. So I think Greg and I can both agree we don't really like vacation other than the family aspect of it. It's good. It's good for the family. We enjoy that part of it. Don't get me wrong. But from a work standpoint, you got so much positive momentum. You got so many good things going on, or you're working through problems even. But, you're feeling very productive.
So y'all are trying to tell me that you like your job.
Absolutely. I love it.
So I just wanted to say that out loud, because there's not a lot of people that feel that way about what they do for a living, and it's just cool to hear 2 people that do. It's great to hear, actually, from that perspective. Tell me a little bit about what do you typically see is the biggest concern when you go to talk to somebody about a listing? What are they usually worried about?
In my opinion, the first thing that is my biggest concern is, are their expectations of achieving a certain number, are they realistic? Because everybody wants the maximum squeeze they can get out of their property. You know this. And that tends to put a little pressure on you, if you will. But Jack, did I miss something, or do you feel like there's another?
No, I mean, the money makes the world go round. So it's either pricing or commission. And, we want to make sure that we've got the data to prove that, to provide to that seller, hey, this is the factual information, what we feel that your property will sell for. And, at the same time, we got to make a living. We can't do this for free.
You know, I had a particular client call me last week that Jack and I went and looked at his property, and then he called me. It's been about 2 or 3 weeks since we went and toured his place, and it was really nice, and I was excited about it. And so anyway, he called me last week, and he said, "Look, Greg," he says, "I want to let you know I haven't forgot you. I'm still ready to get this deal done." He said, "But look, I want you to know I'm not going to pay you the big money." I said, "Well, what do you mean the big money?" He said, "Well, I'm thinking 1 or 2%. I said, "Well, let me ask you a quick question." He said, "Go ahead." I said, "You're telling me if I get the goal that you want for your property, you've got a problem paying me my standard commission?" And there was silence. And he said, "You know what? I guess you're right." I said, "Well, then give me a chance and give me the keys. Boom, we're off to the races."
Yeah, I was going to ask. So when there is an issue like that, so let's take those two angles, right? One where there could be, and I think that this is really common right now, where the market was so hot for 2 years, and then we looked at a drastic kind of plateau to cooling in some areas. Mm-hmm. There's some unrealistic expectations. There's either somebody who acquired land in the last 2 years and wants to retain what they put in, or somebody that's thinking they could still get those big profits and wants to keep that price high. How do you sort of temper those expectations when you're talking to somebody?
Well, I think you when, to be honest with them, you have to. I mean, but just say, "Well, you're expecting this," when, you know, I just sold a tract 2 miles down the road last week at $3,000 an acre. So tell me where are you coming up with that number? And a lot of times when you put it back on their shoulders, they'll kind of come around and start, you know, coming back to reality. Well, I just give them the past experience of the things that's been happening, the things that you actually know. And that's the knowledge coming out and verifying. I can verify everything that I'm sitting here telling you, Mr. Seller. So that's the way I try and attack it, Jack. You got another approach?
No, it's similar. I mean, you know, we try to have comps and past sales. Another thing I like to do is I like to build it, break it down and build it back up. So, you know, when you look at a tract of land, you've got dirt. And so there's a value in the dirt, and there's a value in the trees, and there's a value in the lodge. Well, let's separate all those out and figure out what those values are. And then when we put them back together, then we come up with our price. And usually when you do that, you can validate your comps, because, you know, they may say, "Hey, I want $4,000 an acre," but Greg and I both know it's worth $3,000 an acre. But when you separate those out and then put them back together and show them how you're coming up with that value, you know, the light bulb turns on sometimes, and you know, you can get them to agree. Yeah, well, you know, you're the expert, and this is what you do for a living. You know, and sometimes you turn that conversation around. You know, say, "Hey, I don't tell a mechanic how to change my oil, because I don't know how to change my oil. I mean, this is what we do for a living. Trust me." You know.
And then the other question, so I had two in there. The other one is when you get a response on commission, because that tends to be a conversation that happens a lot in real estate, where you'll find an owner of a property or a house or something like that. It's like, "Well, I don't want to pay you as much. You know, I could probably put a sign in my front yard and sell this." You know, like there's that kind of approach. How do you address that? What's sort of the process for you? And I'm assuming this one's going to be fun.
Well, I had a story that this is very accurate and very true. I had a particular client that brought me and said, "Greg, I've got 1,100 acres on sale." So I said, "Would you come down and ride with me and let's look at it?" I said, "I did." So we made a good loop, and it was a beautiful place. When we got back up to where we met, and he reached behind the seat and he grabbed this big old banner, looked like an Enterprise battery, the green and the blacks and the reds. And he says, "This is what I was thinking," and had "For sale by owner." And I turned and looked at him and I said, I won't use his name, I'll just say, "Sir," I said, "let me ask you a question." He said, "What's that?" I said, "You think your $3 million property deserves a $35 sign sitting on the front of it for sale?" And when I said that, he said, "Hand me the paper." And I walked away with a listing within 15 seconds of me saying that right there. So I was trying to show the value. You know, you're showing me the value of what all you do, what your property's like, how pretty it is, and it is. but does it deserve a $35 for sale by owner out in front of it? Probably not. Not going to happen. I sold the man's property for him. I got the deal done 6 months later.
6 months. That's fantastic.
6 months later. But that's one of the stories that come to mind when you say that I reference back to that, how funny that, I wasn't trying to be disrespectful.
No,
At the same time, I was making to me, a very valid point. You got a $3.5 million property. I feel like you should market it a little bit better than that. And we got the deal done. So.
Yeah. You can always throw the time value of money line at them too. Like, Greg and I are experts and we can get this thing sold. You got to give us the opportunity. So, I can pop out a spreadsheet, put the time value of money, and like if Greg and I get this sold in 4 months at X dollars, and it takes you a year and 4 months at X dollars, how much money did you lose? You basically could have paid for our commission and maybe even pocketed some more money just, through reinvesting that money over that year's time. Maybe not right now, but, typically. But, I mean, there's some truth in that because we are the experts. We do this for a living. Trust us, we will get it done and we will work harder, than you probably expect us to get it done. Whereas, you try to do it by yourself, you're going to have to field the phone calls. You're going to have to show it. You're going to have to set up the closing. You're going to have to go through all that stuff yourself. Whereas, you let us work for you. That's taken care of. All we're going to do is call you and say, hey, we're showing you your property. And hey, we got an offer on your property. And then the rest is.
Sorry to jump in there, but both of you have mentioned, getting deals done and moving property and you're not thinking about what you're telling me as far as like what you would be telling somebody possibly listening in. Like, what is it that you do when you list? How do you market these properties and what are the specifics of what you get done in the field? Because it's sort of one of the unspoken two things that you all do on a regular basis, which is, putting listings live and getting those, into a feed and putting those online and talking to your networks. But I was wondering if you could just tell me a little bit about that, because, it's one thing for me and with my soft hands in my office chair to say that, but you guys are in the field. So,
Jack, you want to answer that, or are you asking what is our daily routine or what our goals are?
Well, sort of, when you market a listing, what's the avenues that you go through to do that?
I think it's like you're baking a cake. I mean, you've got a recipe for it and you're going to have the instructions that's right here in your head, and it's repetitive, of the things you've got to do to check off the box to get that property ready to go to market. So I don't know if there's one thing that jumps out at me. But gosh, that's a good question. Let me think on that for a minute, Jack. Will you help me while I'm thinking?
Yeah, well, I mean, it goes back to what we said when we meet the client. We want to have good data. We want to get the listing, or if it's an offer. But we're specifically talking about marketing property, so we'll talk about listing right now. And once that's in place, I mean, that's baby step one, as Dave Ramsey would say. We have to go from there and schedule a photographer and go out and learn the property and GPS roads and find the corners and, determine what kind of wildlife, what kind of timber species may be out there, what all of the favorable attributes and maybe some negative attributes of the property. So, it's not just getting a listing agreement signed. I mean, it's weeks. It's a process. And then once you get all your marketing material together and you put it and you upload it and it goes out to all the feeds, and then it's phone calls, reaching out to other brokers and letting them know what you have and asking if they have a buyer. Like, I talk to Greg probably 4 times a day and I'm asking what he's doing. I mean, I'm just working. I'm on the phone. So I know Greg's making phone calls all day long, but, and I try to do the same. He's great at that just reaching out and contacting people. So there's that. And then, when that happens, there's showings. Hopefully, that's the end goal, is get showings and get a contract. So, it's not go out there and take pictures with your cell phone from the paved road frontage, throw them up online and wait for the phone to ring. It's not a 1 hour deal. It's a multiple week, if not months deal.
Awesome. No, that's kind of the insight that I was looking to get, because it's always, a lot of people have different ways of working at it, and especially what people assume real estate is from a client side perspective to what what a land professional actually does. And it is good to hear those kind of behind the scenes of what you're doing in the field and how complex it can be, right? Like anything from taking a soil sample to site indexing a timber stand, right? Like those kind of things are fairly in depth and very specific to land. I want to be respectful of your time. I got you guys for an hour before time is money, right? But Greg, you won the President's Award this last year. I was wondering if you could tell me about that, because it's a pretty big deal, man.
It's a big deal. I look back and figure out, trying to think, why me, obviously. And so, you got me tripped up. Winning that award was one of the best achievements that I felt like personally that came to me in my life. It was given out for, I think, a multitude of different reasons. Not just one, but it was a particular, I don't know what to say here on this, but I had basically just given my heart and everything I had to my business this past year. And the rewards of that were growing and meeting new people, helping people. So I think all the goals that I had set in place, I totally surpassed those. And I couldn't have done it without the resources around me. You included, Mac, Jack, everybody, my brokers, other agents in this business that helped. So I didn't, I don't know if I did anything special, but I just got up and gave 110% every day, and every day. So I don't know what else to say about that.
Well, I couldn't let you get out of here without highlighting that, because that was pretty awesome.
Thank you.
But hey, guys, I want to let you, plug yourselves here. You work in 3 states, so tell anybody listening where y'all work, and I'll have your information in the podcast notes to where you're accessible on there. But before I do that, I really, really want to just thank the both of you for giving some time here and kind of telling your story and spreading some knowledge. But yeah, tell everybody where you operate and how to get a hold of you.
Well, yeah, I'm licensed in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, and Arkansas. Whew. Most of our work is in, I'd say, Mississippi, Louisiana, and kind of balance between Tennessee and Arkansas after that. And you can give me a call on cell phone, 601-395-7966, or at the office, 601-878-2484. And you can call Greg. Go ahead, buddy.
All right. So I'm licensed in Mississippi, Louisiana, and Arkansas, and I specialize in high-end recreational, whitetail and waterfowl clubs. That's one of the things that we do and focus on. So if you're in the market for looking to buy or sell any of those type of recreational properties or timber tracts, we would love to help you and get a deal done. You can reach me at 601-408-0019. It's my cell number. Office number is the same as Jack's, 601-878-2484. You can find us on Facebook, social media. We're out there. You can't miss us. And we'd love to go to work for you and make it happen.
Awesome. Thank you guys both. And I'll let you get about your business.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
This concludes episode number 36 for the National Land Realty Podcast with land professionals Jack Gabriel and Greg Clearman, whose contact information you can find in the show notes. You can learn more about land ownership and the buying and selling of land at nationalland.com.